I'm live! Hey everybody, David here. I'm just decided to make a video about ASL Starter Kit using VASL to help me out, as you can see right there. And I'm doing this because, well, I figured there's so many videos on things of how to play the game and everything, but I just want to talk a little bit about some elements of the game here that you'll see in the very first scenario for ASL Starter Kit number 1, scenario number ASL S1, I believe they call it, retaking Vierville. And I do have some of the information here. I don't have copyrighted information up, just little snippets there, enough for the person to, well, I guess to play. So, first I'll just talk about what you see on the screen here. And first of all, if you can see my little circle, there it is. On the left there we have a toolbar, and that is from Neil Ulan's website. I'll try to pull it up here. And it's known as the VASL tables, and this is what it looks like. Basically you get this, you have, whoops, you fill the information out on this side. You see my mouse over there. And at the end of the day, what you end up with is a little bar like over here. Don't worry about that too much. But anyway, there it is. But there's key information on there. The name of the scenario, retaking Vierville, also the date. The date is very important. The month is more so important than the actual number. It's the 7th of June, but for historical purposes, it's more than just saying where it is in the war. Underneath, you have the spot of the two players here. You have the Germans and the Americans, and it talks about their ELR, their experience level rating. As a reminder, for those that may not know, experience level rating demonstrates the resilience of a unit, I'll say. The unit could have a morale of, say, 7, and if they take a, let's say, a +2 morale check, you're going to roll 2 dice, and you're going to add 2 to it, because it's a 2 MC. Basically, they're going to try to roll less than their morale. So the morale is 7, they roll 2 dice, add 2 to it. If they roll a 5, they'll equal 7, right? So what happens, say if you roll an 11, 11 plus 2 is 13. 13 is 5, more than 7. If your Americans' ELR is 5, you're good. If you're Germans and the ELR is 3, with the same morale level of 7, well, you're going to fail your ELR and go into unit replacement. So first line unit becomes second line, or as an example. Okay. The next one under there, and I'm just going to zoom in maybe so you can see it better, if I can find the zoom in button. There it is. All right. Over here it says victory conditions. The Americans win at game end if there are no good order German units in buildings N5, N6, M4, and L3. A few key things in there. It talks about game end. Sometimes the phrasing will be immediately. But at game end is more common to find. It does mention some buildings, and they are circled here. I put little V's on them so you can see them a little bit better. So the Americans win at game end if there are no good order German units in those buildings at game end, right? I keep saying that. What does that mean? Conversely, you could say that the Germans win at game end if there is a good order German unit in buildings N5, N6, M4, or L3. It's the converse of all and. Anyway, get away from the logic of that. But what does good order mean? Let's put this little fellow over here and bring this guy over there. It's game end, and it looks like this. This unit is unbroken. It is not in melee. It is therefore good order. I don't have the exact definition from the starter kit on me here. But if I go, I get the full rules book here, and I'll refer to the full rules book, not to confuse people, but just to, I'm just trying to say it properly. You will not find a rule in Starter Kit that is contradicted in the full rules. For example, it will not say good order is this, and then in the full rules it will say something different. So, good order begins with a G. There it is. A personnel unit which is neither broken, berserk, captured, stunned, shocked, or held in melee. There you go. So that's what we're talking about, good order German unit. So some of these don't apply. He's not stunned or shocked. You don't have to worry about that. Because that applies to vehicle crews. So he is not broken. I don't think there's berserk in starter kit, so we don't have to worry about that. So he's not broken. There's no capture. I don't think there's any capture in starter kit, so don't worry about that. So he's not broken or held in melee. Fair enough. So this unit at game end in that building means Germans win. It could be this guy is in there. He could be wounded. He wins because he's in there. I'll take the wound off right now. But game end, those units that are in close combat, locked in melee, are not in good order. So if this were the case down there, then that's what that means is the Americans win, because all the other units, or all the other buildings are clear of American units. Alright, let's get back to where we were. Yeah. One more. There we go. Alright. So, that's what it is. And I'll just scroll down to this part here we can see here. This is a game thing on Neil's little chart thingy. When you have the game track and you'll see the nationality symbol on it, in this case the American star, the German cross, that means that there is a reinforcement available on that chart. It's kind of cool. And then the setup conditions talks about when units are set up, where they go, and in this case I've marked the map with little American stars to show where the Americans set up. If I'm not mistaken, it says that the Americans must set up one of each of these multi-man counters. There's a half squad and 3 full squads in one of these hexes, and there can be no more than one multi-man counter in each one. So arbitrarily, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 8-1 leader can set up in any hex. I'll put him there. Again, I'm not worried about the beginning of the game, but that's it. The game is set up. You might hear people in ASL talk about snipers. You may talk about wind, weather, environmental conditions checks, all this kind of stuff. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Worry about what the rules have. And the starter kit rules are quite accessible, quite light in terms of, they're not this. Granted, this is a little deceptive because it does have all the chapters, including chapter W, and then chapter H. So that's what it's like. That's the pocket edition. Big pockets. I like to have pockets that big. Hold a wallet that big. Anyway, so that's the beginning, and then you're ready to begin. I'm not going to go through the actual gameplay, but I'm going to talk about this one in terms of the terrain and how it interacts with the game itself and how important it is. So every bit of terrain interacts in the game in either line of sight, protection, and movement. I'm just going to make sure I write this down so I get it in the proper order. Line of sight, protection, and movement. What do I mean by this? Line of sight in the game, as you'll see, or as you know, it goes, it's a hexagon grid and it goes from dot to dot. So J2 to L2, fancy tool here, hopefully you can see that. It's green on green, probably won't see that. Whatever, anyway, you'll see that it, it is from point to point. You start in one hex, you go to the other one. And in this case, for example, I2 looking at L3, the terrain in between is what you're worried about, and of course the final terrain. So terrain will either block line of sight, will have no effect on line of sight, or in between. We call that a hindrance. So from I2 to L3, there is no effect on the line of sight between them. From I2 to M4, however, line of sight is blocked in L3. The stone building will block line of sight. Most terrain blocks line of sight. Open ground has no effect on line of sight. From point to point, if it's all open ground, there is no effect. You can see each other clearly. And here's a unique situation. We'll call this is like a road in a forest. And if you see, it starts in B5 and it goes all the way to I2, it's green. All the actual depiction of the line of sight using a thread in real life or using the tool here in ASL, virtual ASL, you can see that it has no effect on the line of sight. So we talked about line of sight. And we talked about blocking. So woods will block line of sight that goes through it. You can always see into a terrain, but you can't see through it. Buildings will block line of sight. Doesn't matter if it's a brown or a stone building. We'll talk about the difference later. And it's by the actual depiction itself. So if you get a weird, funky sort of line of sight here, here's one, good. From E7 to H10. If you look closely on my map, you can see here at F7 that the depiction of the line of sight doesn't go through the depiction or the drawing of the stone building. Therefore, there's no effect on it. Even though it goes into the hex that contains that building, the actual line of sight is a true line of sight between the 2 points. Again, live, use a thin piece of thread. And if the depiction does not appear on both sides of the thread, then it's not blocked. You might go into it partially. That's fine. You can still see through it. That's right in the rules. So we talked about blocking line of sight, no effect on line of sight. Now we're going to talk about hindrance. See this little hex here? It's called orchard. Orchards will hinder line of sight, and so will this is grain. Throwback, I talked about date. It's June in this month. The grain is in effect. Outside of a certain period, grain is not effect. It's considered to be open ground. Read the rules. But I'm going to talk about this. Grain is quite simple. If the line of sight passes through the depiction, then the line of sight is hindered. If the line of sight goes into but not through, then there's no effect. So you can see from K9 to M9, if the line of sight goes into the grain, not through it, so therefore there's no effect. But if it goes through the depiction, then there is an effect. It's the exact same for buildings that block line of sight. If it goes into the depiction, and that's your final hex, then there's no effect. The line of sight is unblocked. But if you try to go beyond the depiction, then it's either hindered or blocked. Now we're going to come to the orchard. That's what these things are. And they can be, they're pretty much in season. ASL Starter Kit number 1, they're pretty much in season. It doesn't matter the time of year. There's a slight difference when you get into involving elevations, but don't worry about that. Here's the thing. I talked about the depiction. Orchards are a little bit different. They're called inherent terrain. So that means the entire hex is considered to be orchards, including the hex sides. So for example, I'm up here in, let's find one, D6. I'm going down. Beyond, you can see that it hits the orchard depiction in E9 on the side into F9. Because it goes through the hex, it's affected. In this case, it's just along the hex side. Doesn't matter. Even if it just nicks the corner, it will be affected as well. I'm going to find one that does it. Alright, so here, for example, like you're going off hex here, and it just hits the corner of F9 as an example. All it has to do is hit the outside of the hex itself, and it's affected. It's called an inherent hex, or inherent terrain hex. You also have smoke grenades, and you can see this smoke grenade here is a level +2. And line of sight that passes through any part of that hex, its inherent terrain, will be affected. So from G4 is shooting to I8, but there's a smoke grenade here in I7. It disappeared. So it will be affected as well. It's artificial terrain, but we will get rid of it just like that. So that's in terms of line of sight. Protection. This is if a unit is occupying a hex and it's fired at, sometimes terrain will offer a level of protection. Open ground has no protection. Orchards offer no protection. Grain offers no protection. Those three offer no protection. If you are in that hex and fire is coming into that hex, you're not protected. Point to note, if it's during the movement phase and you're moving in open ground, there is a -1 dice roll modifier that will affect the fire coming in, so it's less than protected. This -1 for moving in the open does not apply if you're in grain when it's in season or in orchard. The next one I'll talk about is woods. Here's some woods here. If you're occupying a hex with woods and fire comes into you, you have a +1 level of protection. So no matter what the dice roll is, they'll add +1. Point to note, I did mention movement. If you're shot at during the movement phase with first fire, and you're using a form of movement known as non-assault movement, no matter where you are, it's a -1 dice roll modifier, and they're all cumulative. If you're in the open and moving, that's -1 for moving in the open. Non-assault movement, that's another -1 for a net -2. It's very dangerous to be caught moving in the open in the range of enemy. If you're in woods, it's cumulative. -1 for non-assault movement, +1 for the woods for a net dice roll modifier of 0. Remember, you can use assault movement to move 1 hex during the movement phase. This does not apply during the advance phase. Advancing is not considered movement in terms of the rules. +1 for woods. Next, I mentioned about buildings, and there's some that are, what's that, gray and black, and this one's sort of a brown and black. The brown and black buildings are considered to be wooden buildings. Wooden buildings offer protection of +2. Stone buildings, however, and that's the majority on this hex, or map, I think they're all stone except for 2. All the buildings, that is. So every one of them, if you're in there, it's a +3 modifier. So just bring stuff together. Imagine you're moving into a building. Let's get a happy little fella here. He starts here in 05 and he moves into N5. And he's showing us moved. He used non-assault movement in there. What would the dice roll modifier be for a fire attack during the movement phase as first fire? You can think about that for a second or two. Did you come up with +2? If you did, you're correct. Reason for that, +3 for the building, -1 for first fire non-assault movement. If, however, the defender waits until the defensive fire phase, then the dice roll modifier is +3. The movement's done, now you're shooting out a static target, so therefore it doesn't count. Get rid of the move markers, there they are. Okay. +3, but where's the wooden building? +2, +1, and then open ground, grain, and orchard offer no protection. The last one I'll talk about is movement. I'll use this happy little squad here. For movement, most infantry units have, most multi-man counters I should say, have 4 movement factors. They can't be saved and used up later. It's all use or lose. Every movement phase they get 4. If you are an inexperienced unit, i.e. a conscript or a green unit, I will pull one down. I'll go to here, I'll go to Allied, I'll go to American, go to half squad, and I'll get a G unit. There we go. And I'll get rid of that. Okay. G in the top right corner refers to it being a green unit. The other type of inexperienced unit is C, conscript. They differ a little bit, but we'll worry about that. Green units, experienced units, have a movement factor rate of only 3. That's key. Normal units have a unit of 4, and leaders, or single-man counters, have a movement of 6. So leaders, that's what we're talking about here. So this fella here will move. He has 3, he has 4, he has 6. If a unit is stacked with a leader, they will get an extra 2 movement factors if they start with and use their movement throughout the entire phase. Green units, when they go there, will get their +2, but because they are green and they have a leader, their inexperience ratings will drop and they'll actually get a total of 6 movement factors. So they go from 3 to 6. It's kind of cool. Conscripts, only 3. With a leader, they'll have 5. Alright. So, I mentioned about how terrain will affect movement. Open ground costs 1 movement factor to enter. And you expend the movement factors in the hex that you're entering. So this guy is in grain. He moves to Q8, that costs 1. This guy, he's in L7, it's a stone building. He wants to move into the street here. It costs 1. Orchards, they cost 1 to enter. Let's bring the half squad over here. So assume he's here in the woods and he wants to move using non-assault movement. Enters open ground for 1, open ground for a total of 2, orchard hex for 3, another orchard hex for 4. Oh, quite easy. Let's assume that grain is in season. Grain, to enter grain, costs 1.5 movement factors. Remembering that this fellow here has 3 movement factors, he will enter P8 for 1.5, and then enter O9 for a total of 3, and he cannot move anymore. The half squad here also starts in Q8, enter P8 for 1.5, go into O9 for 3. You know he has 1 movement factor left. The only place he can really go is to P9 if he wanted to. So again, you pay the points as you enter the hex. Every other terrain you see on the map, on this map, will cost you 2 movement factors to enter. Buildings of any type cost 2, and woods cost 2 as well. For example, the green fella is here. Let's start him in the woods. He starts in the woods here, and he wants to move with non-assault movement. H7 for 2, and he's done. I mean, he can go to H8, H6, H8, or whatever, but he can't go further in the woods. The half squad here has 4 movement factors. 2 for these woods, 2 more for a total of 4, and he's fine. The leader starts here, and he's showing off. 2 to here, 4 to here, and 6 to there. Now let's assume they all started at I8 as they did, and now the leader wants to take all of them. Remembering that green units gain a bonus, they lose their inexperienced status if stacked with a leader for movement. Leader wants them to all come non-assault, 2 to here, 4 to there, 6 to there. All because the leader's with them. Basically, he's leading them along. Alright, and I also mentioned the buildings. So that's it. That's line of sight, protection, and movement. Not quite. There's one more special case, and it's road movement. You got yourself here, and he wants to roll down the road. And it's basically to use roads, irrespective of the other terrain in the hex, is cost 1 to enter the hex. 1, 2, 3, 4. You notice the unit started on a road, used every movement factor on a road. You can use what's called road bonus and go 1 more for 5, free of charge. How about that? How would the leader do it? Well, watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, road bonus, 7. On a road, a leader can go quite far. If you think about it, 7 times 4 is like 28, so it's 440 meters per hex, so it's 280 meters. Green guys on the road, starting in the same spot. 1, 2, 3, road bonus 4. So you can see they're spread out a little bit farther. Again, they all start in the same hex with the leader, and they're going to follow the leader all the way through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, road bonus 7. Notice that you have to start on the road and end on the road, and that's all the only, you have to be using a road or crossing a road hex side the whole way. For example, if you're in O3, you cannot go to O4 and call it road movement because you're getting off the road and then getting on the road. So if he's here, you want to go to O4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, road bonus 7 as an example. I talked about the other terrain in the hex. Here's the thing. If you're going down one of these and using it down the road hex side itself, as these fellows look like they're going to do, remember, or not remember, you wouldn't know this yet, but You can use the road on the way down as such. Remember, there's a leader there. I'll put the leader on top so it's obvious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, road bonus 7. Amazing. But let's say, for the sake of argument, at the other end of this road, right here, there's a German squad, and you want to get close to them. Well, if you come down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, road bonus 7, the squad can shoot at you as if you are on open ground because you're expending movement factors on the road, and you're running down the road, and this guy can shoot at you all the way. If you still want to go down, you want to use the road hex, you can actually expend and say, I'm using the woods. 2, decides not to shoot. 4, decides not to shoot. 6, decides to shoot. First fire. What will the terrain effects modifiers be? Well, there's no intervening hexes, so they have a clear line of sight. He expended the 2 for entering the woods, even though there's a road there. You can still use the woods if you want. Expended 2. So anyway, +1 for forests, or woods. -1 for non-assault movement, so it's net 0. So if they do decide to shoot, it rolls an IFT, rolls a 7. +1, -1 is no effect. Yeah, you'll learn all this other stuff doing it fast on purpose. It's a pin task check, start with the leader, the other 2 dudes, and they're fine. Yeah, that's it. Final thing I'll talk about is the other kind of movement. So get rid of defensive fire and get rid of residual. There we go. There is another type of movement. It's called double time movement. And if you declare double time movement, you basically get a bonus of 2 movement factors. So the full-time squad, or a squad by himself, goes from 4 to 6. Inexperienced unit goes from 3 to 5. And the leader goes from 6 to 8. Yeah, exactly. I know what you're thinking. What if you're all stacked together and you're using road bonus? You can go quite far. Declares double time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Road bonus 9. Really booking down the road. That's quite a distance to go. 9 hexes in one phase with an infantry unit is fantastic. So, excuse me. Pardon me. Yeah, so that's the movement. And then there's rules on when you lose your counter exhausted status and what are the effects of it. And so it says right on IPC is now -1. Don't worry about that. Close combat plus or minus. And again, I'm just talking about line of sight protection and movement in this one. And that's it. That's all I want to talk about. So, that's basically it. I just wanted to go through a little bit of ASL Starter Kit and explain terrain in terms of line of sight, protection, and movement. So as a refresher, line of sight can have no effect, it can be blocked, or it can be somewhere in between. We call that a hindrance. Fire into a hex has protection. Open ground has no protection. As a reminder, in the first fire phase, moving in the open costs you a -1 modifier of -1. Orchard and grain have no protection as well. Woods have a +1 to protection, so that helps you. You want to roll low to cause an effect if you're the shooter, so a plus modifier is actually beneficial to the defender. Wooden buildings are +2 and stone buildings are +3. In terms of movement, open ground, orchard are 1 movement factor to enter. Oh, hey George, thanks for joining in. I can see your chat, and if I try to chat here, I'm going to see if I can do it. Oh, I have to sign into chat. I don't know how to do that. I'll do that later. Grain is 1.5, and then everything else that you see on the starter kit map costs you 2 to enter. Woods, buildings of both types cost 2 to enter. That's it. Anyway, just one little bit there, a little bit of fun with retaking Vierville. It's a very fun scenario. I've played it several times, even though I've been playing ASL, the full game, for quite some time. So what I'm going to do is pause that, but while I'm online, I'm going to try to sign in so I can say hi to my friend George. You can open this chat in a web browser, so I'm going to open a web browser. Holy Googly moogly, what's happening here? Oh, hi, E-O-R-G. There we are. Hey, it worked. Alright, so this is, make it a smaller, get off there. Great, googly moogly. I just saw that commercial again with, what's his name, Andy Reid, I think he is, the coach with Kansas City Chiefs. Guy's painting the end zone. He's all done. He's having his Snickers bar, whatever the heck it is. Huh, who's the chefs? Yeah, great, googly moogly. Anyway. I did it. Yes, I did, George. I did. Anyway, so I'm ready to sign out here. That's it. It's a Friday night. Gonna watch some football later, maybe. Watch a movie. And I just wanted to share this again. As an aside, that's what I wanted to talk about was why starter kit, why this. One of the guys at work, he actually approached me about, he said, hey, so-and-so said you play advanced squad leader. Yes, I do. And this kid's about, kid. He's a man. He's like 23, 24, but he's young, especially when it comes to the gamers. So I gave him a copy of starter kit number 1. He mentioned how there are a lot of videos online, many of them tailored to full ASL. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do something simple, talk about terrain and how it affects the game for ASL Starter Kit. Whether he finds this, this video or not, I hope he does. Anyway, so there it is, terrain in ASL Starter Kit number 1, and how it affects line of sight, protection, and movement. I will enjoy the game, George. I can't remember who's playing, but in the meantime, I think I'll look for some videos on how to use a slide rule. It's one of my other weird things I do. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye and a countdown from 10 so that it doesn't snap off the end of the video. And I got that from Gary because he helped me out with this. And look at that, half an hour, give or take. Excellent. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.